4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
All right, folks, welcome aboard. A busy day ahead here on the Steve Malzberg Show. I was very disappointed to see that the FAA extended its ban on flights to Israel from the U.S. For another 24 hours. As I was saying previously, if you were watching the back and forth between Ed Berliner and myself, I think that this is politically motivated on the part of the FAA. I don't know who pulls that string, who makes that decision. But certainly on the record, most government officials in Israel, including the very liberal to the left, Shimon Peres, the president of Israel, have all said that this is handing Hamas a victory. There's no need for this ban. Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York, has flown to Israel on El Al. El Al is, I believe, although I believe, I know Lufthansa, Delta, US Air, and the others are not allowed to fly, but I don't know about El Al. But he flew on El Al yesterday, so I guess that the ban does not affect El Al. He called the airport in Israel, Ben Gurion, the safest airport in the world. He's probably right. And you know what? If the airlines are afraid of liability, then let every passenger that wants to fly to Israel and sign a waiver of liability. You know, why is it incumbent upon the FAA? The FAA could recommend, the U.S. government and State Department could recommend don't travel to Israel, don't travel to the Middle East, but banning the flights, never once has the FAA banned flights to Israel before. And there's been a lot of conflict over there. There have been missiles there before. That's why I believe that it's happening under this president at this particular time. All right, Dan Coates ready to join us. But first, let's watch this very poignant, moving moment.
5 days since the crash, and families are still waiting. Memorials are withering, and funerals are stalled.
You don't care about the politics, right? This is not a political thing for you.
I care about my daughter. She wanted to go start her life, and it's gone.
For now, all he can do is wait. Facebook, his only way to express his sorrow and frustration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Putin, leaders of the separatists or the Ukraine government, for murdering my loved and only child. She has been shot out of the sky. Regards, Elzemik, father, whose life is ruined now.
All right, folks, and joining us now, Senator Dan Coates, Republican from Indiana, member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Hello, Senator.
Hello.
You know, when you hear and see something like that, it really reinforces what this is all about, that those were innocent civilians on that plane. You have made proposals, including a DOD appropriations bill, a proposal in that bill to sanction Russian arms deals, and also you've written extensively your suggestions on how to deal with this and how to deal with it with regard to Putin and Russia. So the bodies were, some of the bodies, there's still about 100 bodies still in that field somehow in body parts, but some of them were flown back to the Netherlands. Talk about what should be taking place as opposed to what is taking place.
Well, this is an incident that has shocked the world, and as we watch this unfold in terms of how they're dealing with the bodies, the fact that the Russians are complicit in this is virtually assured by all the intelligence that we have, and yet the Russians continue to deny any responsibility for all of this. And I think the world needs to come down with a condemnation so strong and so worldwide that even the Russian propaganda machine can't keep the Russians from understanding and knowing exactly what happened here. I have been very, very active in terms of proposing crippling sanctions on Russia unless they stand down immediately in Ukraine, unless they take responsibility. If you let them get away with this with just tough words and not action, then we're going to see more and more of this kind of thing as the Russian bear continues to take bigger and bigger bites out of Ukraine and other border countries that have achieved independence after the breakup of the Soviet Union.
I want to talk about some of your solutions here, but you know, 2 more planes shot down today. Reportedly, they were Ukrainian fighter jets or fighter planes shot down by the rebels and bragging about it and saying this teaches you stay out of our skies. Again, obviously Putin has not given any order to stop shooting planes.
No, he hasn't, and he hasn't given any order to stand down and take responsibility. And the reason is that he hears words, but he doesn't see actions. There have been minimal sanctions imposed on some of his cronies in terms of their banking rights and so forth and so on. But this is far too little. We need crippling sanctions, the threat of crippling sanctions, and the ability to impose those to cripple their economy. And when Putin sees that, it'll hopefully get his attention, because obviously any humanitarian plea, any decency plea, even any tough rhetoric about what we threaten to do has not moved Putin an inch.
All right,
so we've got to make it happen.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So tell us some of what we had Congressman Peter King on earlier in the week, and he said that we should, for starters, not let Aeroflot land in the U.S. or in European nations, and we should take the World Cup away from them in 2018. You go a lot further.
Oh, a lot further. I mean, yeah, I'm all for taking the World Cup. I proposed that weeks and weeks and weeks ago, but that was one of 10 measures. We have to go after their exports, their military exports. They derive a lot of revenue from selling weapons to bad guys all over the world. I have language in process here in 2 or 3 separate venues in the United States Senate that puts us in a position to deny their sales of military equipment to countries that we deal with, we no longer will deal with. That hurts the Russians' economy. And secondly, I've proposed a number of ways in which we can begin to wean Europe off their energy dependence on Russia. And I think even beginning to take those steps and announcing those steps will drive the message home that we are no longer going to be a long-term customer of yours, and over a period of time it's going to drastically hurt your economy. All of this, I think, would drop the Russian stock market. It would impose more economic damage to the fragile Russian economy. And these are just some of the things that we need to do. But we need to have the Europeans join us because they're recipients of a lot of the Russian export. And they've been somewhat tentative and reluctant to do it. I think Chancellor Merkel of Germany understands this, but she needs to convince her people that if you don't stand up now to this bully in the playground, he's going to keep being a bully, and you're going to pay a higher price for it in the future. And
you got France with that deal to sell Russia all those the military ships and all that. I mean, so they're some of them are carrying on business as usual.
Well, you would think Europe, given its history, under the thumb of the Third Reich, would see that this history is starting to be repeated, and you would think they would learn that lesson from history and basically say, the earlier you address this, the earlier you stand up to it, the less consequence it will be in the future. So what the French have been very, very reluctant to announce that they were going to take the steps. They've announced that they'll threaten to do this, but this time is of the essence here, and we need to stop Putin before he goes any further.
Before we get to the border crisis here, let me just ask you. Of course, the FAA ban, that they instituted for 24 hours pending review. No flights into Israel, and many European nations followed suit. And many in Israel believe that this is punishing Israel and rewarding the terrorists. So let me ask you about the Aeroflot, the proposed Aeroflot ban by Peter King. Is that something you would favor too? Would that hit right at Russia? I mean, if we're willing to do that, and the view of some reward Hamas and the threat of terror, how about not letting Aeroflot land until Putin does some of what we want him to do?
I think that's a good idea, and I think that should be one of a multiple number of sanctions that again hurt their economy and send a real strong message that the world will not tolerate what's happening here.
It's easy for me to say. Where are we, sir, on the border crisis? This, of course, has gotten off the front pages because of everything that's going on with Israel and Hamas and Putin and Ukraine and the plane. But this crisis is not going away. In fact, it's day by day. I'd imagine it's getting worse.
Well, there has been some limited progress, but not nearly enough. And what's AWOL here is a strong statement from the President of the United States that we're he will support a change and adjustment in the 2008 law that has set up a system here that allows these people to stay until the judge determines they have to go back. Well, there's 375,000 people lined up waiting to hear from a few judges, and that is driving the issue down in Central America that you get to the United States, it'll be 18 to 24 months before you go before a judge, and by that time nobody will be able to find you, so you don't show up. So I would love to send, the President needs to stand up and make a declarative statement that we're going to enforce the law the same way we do with the Canadians and the Mexicans who are on our border, and that is immediate return. And we're going to do that for these Central American nations. That requires a change in the law, and Congress should be ready to support that in a minute, but the President has to lead. And secondly, we need to get messages down to these Central American countries and the mothers of these children that they're sending up and paying life savings in order to turn them over to drug cartels and coyotes and other that are abusing their children on the 1,500-mile journey. We need to get down there with those governments and say we're going to do everything we can, and they're going to do everything they can to stop their people from believing the lies that are being sent to them.
Senator, you think they're going back? I'm sorry to interrupt. We have less than a minute. Do you think these kids who are here, and most of them are teenagers from what I'm reading, 15, 16, you think they're going back or no?
I think they have to. I think we have to enforce this, or the flood will continue to flow from south to north, because if they see that those that have come have been absorbed, they're going to say, yeah, that'll happen to us too. So you've got to go to the source of this and stop it and close that border before you can begin to address this problem.
Senator, thank you for your time, sir. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Senator Dan Coats, ladies and gentlemen, member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Back to the Russian situation. Threaten with the ability to impose crippling sanctions. I don't think this president has it in him. I don't think Europe has it in him. I really don't. I just think this will be forgotten about in 6 months to a year, and Putin will do his next thing and get away with it. The Malzberg panel is next. Don't go away.